The Nun 2 comes out this weekend, and what a long road it's been to get here. With a world comprising about 30 projects, it's impressive we made it this far. From The Conjuring, to Annabelle, to Llorona, to The Nun, this world is filled with horror stories and is one of the few successful horror cinematic universes outside of the original Dark Universe with Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, and others, and the Friday the 13th Nightmare on Elm Street universe. So it's crazy to say that with the release of The Nun 2, we are just one project away from the end of the DCEU. Yes, the DC Extended Universe started by Zack Snyder. You heard me right. Now, why would I mention the DCEU when we're talking about The Nun 2? Well, for one, because it's in the title of the video, and secondly, because one character actually makes a couple of appearances in both the DCEU and the Conjuring Universe. This character is Annabelle, the doll from the Conjuring Universe who helps us realize why these two worlds, with no overarching storylines, are actually the same world. So welcome to Big Flick Energy, and it's time to discuss how Annabelle and the entire Conjuring Universe may be more intertwined into the DC Extended Universe than any of us ever thought before. So it's a pretty random recurring cameo for Annabelle, but this Easter egg has become a staple in some DC films like the first Shazam film, Aquaman, and now in Shazam! Fury of the Gods, where I'm almost certain the character will return in some form in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Annabelle has become DC's equal to Pixar's Luxo Ball and Pizza Truck, which show up in all of their films. The reason behind these Easter eggs is because of the directors of these films. For Aquaman, James Wan, creator of the Conjuring Universe, and the Annabelle character, directed it. For Shazam 1 and 2, David S. Sandberg directed both of these films along with Annabelle creation. So it makes sense why both of them would want to put staples of their careers into their other films. It is interesting to wonder if there's more to this though. You see, the Conjuring films and DC films are both films distributed exclusively by Warner Bros. Discovery. This is what allows Annabelle to show up in these DC films more easily, but it also opens up the door for the franchises to be connected. Studios know people like me will make these videos saying they are connected, and it'll bring in more fans to both universe, which definitely helped Aquaman in hitting $1 billion at the box office when it came out due to James Wan's horror fan base storming the cinema, combined with DC fans and other fans. This connection is built even more strongly when leaving the realm of film. You see, DC and Conjuring have partnered up before, around 2 years ago to be exact, where they teamed up to release a comic by the name The Conjuring the Lover. What's interesting about this is that it's not a disconnected comic, because the events of The Lover actually officially set up the events of the latest Conjuring film, The Devil Made Me Do It. So not only has the Conjuring Universe had its imprint on the DCEU with Annabelle Easter eggs in almost 25% of their films, but DC has had its imprint on the Conjuring Universe by distributing comics canon to the Conjuring films with the DC name attached to the projects. Oh, and I can't forget to mention, we can actually see Atlantean artifacts in the film Annabelle Comes Home in the Warren Artifact Room, which, if you're not familiar with the world of The Conjuring, is where the protagonists of the Conjuring franchise keep all their relics from missions and cases they've worked on through the years. Now, I know the two franchises have very different tones, even with Shazam and Aquaman in the DCU, which are actually some of the more lighthearted and comedic DCU films, but we also have to look at what Marvel did with Werewolf by Night and how stylistically different that special is from the rest of the MCU, which in my opinion is a project 100 times more different from the MCU than the Conjuring films are from the DCEU. With all this, I actually think we have enough evidence to make a case for the films being part of the universe, especially since the DCEU is about to end, so it's a pretty harmless theory that is fun and doesn't ruin anything set up in these worlds. Also, when coming up with counter-arguments to this, I really couldn't find any, as the events of the DCEU take place after the Conjuring films, or in the case of Wonder Woman, it takes place years before, in which the world doesn't know of that story of Wonder Woman from World War I until Batman uncovers it in the future. Also, the events of the Conjuring films are small-scale stories that probably only somebody like Amanda Waller or John Constantine, if he exists in this world, would know about and wouldn't make sense to bring up in a DC film because it wouldn't connect to the larger story. So there are no plot holes with the universes connecting either. Another point to add to this is who DC's Kevin Feige is. A couple months ago we speculated who it could be, and ultimately we were wrong, but it ended up being the duo of James Gunn and Peter Safran. We all know who James Gunn is, but Peter Safran is a name that many less people know. Peter Safran is a figure which has been extremely impactful in 2 cinematic universes as an executive producer. Can you guess which 2? That's right, the DC Extended Universe and the Conjuring Universe. On the DC side of things, he's produced both Aquaman films and both Shazam films, which were all films where Annabelle showed up in, alongside producing the Suicide Squad, which brings in the connection to James Gunn, since that was Gunn's first DG project. For the Conjuring Universe, he was a producer on, well, every film in the Conjuring Universe. So at least to me, it's revealing that one of the main figures behind these 2 universes is now one of the 2 leaders behind the DC Universe. So while you can watch the Conjuring films as part of the soon-to-end DCEU, considering we already know some DCEU characters like Peacemaker and Blue Beetle will be joining Gunn's DCU, you should actually also be able to watch these projects as part of the soon-to-begin DCU. DC knew exactly what they were doing, letting Annabelle show up in their films and bringing in Safran as one of the heads of the DCEU. So here's a video about how it's all connected. But now it's time to go into the order to watch all of the projects in this combined DC Conjuring Universe. I also won't spoil what happens in the films, by the way, just in case you're interested in watching the Conjuring films, now knowing they're connected to the DCEU or vice versa. I'll just give a quick synopsis of each of the projects instead. Also, I'm not going to go into the multiverse that connects to the DCEU. I'm going to leave that for when Aquaman and Lost Kingdom comes out, that I'll do a final DCEU watch order. So we start off with Wonder Woman in the year 1918. Here, Diana, an Amazonian warrior princess, enters the human world during World War I to defeat the god Ares and bring peace. We then have a short film called Etta's Mission, which ties into the eventual Justice League film. This goes pretty smoothly into the next film tonally, with The Nun, in which the events of this film take place in 1952, but are a direct result of World War II. Here, a priest and a novitiate are sent to Romania to investigate a suicide at a convent and uncover a demonic force. The next film in 1955 is Annabelle Creation, where the origin of the cursed Annabelle doll is revealed as it terrorizes a group of orphans and their caretaker. So chronologically, the next project in this world should be The Nun 2, but I'll get back to that project later. We then move on to Annabelle's next appearance in the late 1960s film, Annabelle, where a vintage doll possessed by a malevolent spirit terrorizes a couple and a group of girls. This film is then followed up by the 1971 story that started it all, The Conjuring, where paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren help a family haunted by a malevolent presence in their farmhouse. Now, The Conjuring also did something pretty unique, where there was a fan film contest in which the top 5 would not only be advertised by the team behind The Conjuring, but they would also become part of the official canon of the world of The Conjuring. So the first of these projects is Innocent Souls, in which 2 Colombian boys entered an abandoned home during the night and discover a slew of creepy artifacts. This is followed up by the end of the Annabelle trilogy in 1972 with Annabelle Comes Home, where the Warrens' daughter, along with a babysitter and her friend, inadvertently unleash supernatural chaos when they enter the Warrens' artifact room. We then have another short film by the name of What's Wrong with Mom, which follows a distraught daughter as she and her father pray for the safety and health of her mother, who lies possessed by a demon behind the thin shroud in the family's living room. This is then followed up by The Curse of La Llorona 1 year later in 1973. In this film, a social worker and her children face the wrath of La Llorona, a vengeful spirit from Mexican folklore. After this is another short film by the name of Blund's Lullaby, which deals with another character from folklore. This eerie short film was inspired by a Nordic entity known as John Blund, a kind of Sandman-style apparition that descends upon a small house to strike terror into the heart of a little girl. We continue in the Conjuring Universe with The Conjuring 2 in 1977, where Ed and Lorraine travel to London to assist a single mother and her children plagued by a poltergeist. After, we have another short film by the name of The Confession. This chilling short follows a young woman named Fiona who seeks solace in a confessional booth. This then takes us to The Conjuring The Devil Made Me Do It in 1981, in which Ed and Lorraine Warren investigate a murder case where a man claims to have been possessed by a demon when committing the crime. Before that last film, however, we have DC's comic that is canon to the films, The Conjuring the Lover. The next film goes back to where we started the universe with the film Wonder Woman 1984, which, as the title says, takes place in 1984, just 3 years after The Devil Made Me Do It, which is a drastic shift tonally, but we will stay in the realm of magic with this film, where Diana faces a new threat as she battles Maxwell Lord and Cheetah while dealing with some personal challenges. After this film, we jump a couple of years later into 2013's Man of Steel, where a young Clark Kent, discovering his extraordinary abilities, becomes Superman to defend Earth from a powerful alien threat, which directly leads up to 2015's Batman vs. Superman, where, as the name states, sets Batman and Superman up against each other in a battle for the ages. By the way, we're watching Batman vs. Superman the Ultimate Edition for this movie because it's a lot better than the theatrically released version and is actually available on Max. The next film returns to demonology with the character Enchantress in 2016's Suicide Squad. In this film, a team of imprisoned supervillains is assembled to undertake dangerous Black Ops missions for the government. We are now back in the world of The Conjuring with our final short, The Nurse, which tells the tale of a child recovering from eye surgery in a dimly lit hospital, with her eyes wrapped in thick bandages, but the story takes a much darker turn. I know I mentioned since all these films take place in the past, they don't interfere with the DCEU stories, but these shorts are such minor stories with no consequences to even the actual Conjuring films, that it doesn't really matter when they are in the timeline, because nobody expected the nurse to fight against Superman. The shorts just add more lore to this combined cinematic universe. We then continue into 2017 with Justice League, which is a direct follow-up of Batman vs. Superman, where Batman and Wonder Woman recruit a team of superheroes to stop the world-threatening Steppenwolf and his Parademon army. And once again, we're watching the Snyder Cut and not the original cut, because that cut was pretty mid, while the Snyder Cut is not only a lot better, but also fits more smoothly tonally with the Conjuring Universe. In the next film, Annabelle makes her return in 2018 through the film Aquaman, as she sinks to the bottom of the ocean, where it could be said somebody threw her into the ocean to get rid of her. In this film, Arthur Curry, half human and half Atlantean, embarks on a quest to claim his throne as the underwater king and prevent war. However, Annabelle is not gone for long, as she comes back a year later in 2019 in Shazam, on a shelf, showing she's returned to wreak havoc, once again in the DC Conjuring Universe. In this film, a teenager gains the ability to transform into a superhero with various superpowers by saying the magic word Shazam, and we also see some other demons in this world in the forms of the 7 deadly sins. The next film, Birds of Prey, ties back into the Suicide Squad with Harley Quinn, but a couple years later in 2020. Here, Harley Quinn and a group of female anti-heroes team up to save a young girl from a crime lord. We then move on to 2021 with the film The Suicide Squad, not to be confused with 2016's Suicide Squad. This film brings back Harley Quinn for a second consecutive appearance, along with introducing characters like Peacemaker, who gets his own TV show 1 year later in 2022. This film follows a new iteration of the Suicide Squad, which is sent on a deadly mission to a South American island to take down a dangerous regime, while the show Peacemaker follows the titular character while he tries to deal with the mistakes of his past and needs to stop an alien invasion on Earth, which, if you've seen Secret Invasion and were disappointed by it, I recommend Peacemaker because it's a better superhero alien invasion show. The next project, also in 2022, brings us back to the world of magic and demonology through Dr. Fate and Sabbac, where Sabbac gives us a glimpse at hell in this world in the form of Black Adam. In this film, an ancient being is brought back to life and must protect his home while fending off heroes sent by Amanda Waller. Next, we have 2023's Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which brings back Annabelle on another bookshelf from her last appearance in the DCEU, where Shazam and his family must face off against the Daughters of Atlas to save the world. Next up, we stay in 2023 with The Flash, where we are introduced to the multiverse through the reintroduction of time travel, since we hadn't seen it since Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, this is the only film I need to kind of spoil for what happens next in this world, so spoiler warning for anybody who hasn't seen this film. The film ends with the Flash fixing the mess up that he did. But he didn't learn his lesson, So he decided to still change time, he still changed the past, just to a lesser extent. So while the world isn't completely different anymore, we still have a different version of Batman that is not Ben Affleck. And it's not Michael Keaton. Instead, it's George Clooney. So to continue this world, we sort of start a new timeline here, which includes any films to come out after The Flash alongside the film Batman and Robin. I'm not including Batman Forever because, as it was explained in The Flash, some people can look the same while others can look completely different. So since the Batman actors switch between those films, I'm saying that film is an entirely separate world. So back to the timeline, we continue this revamped timeline with 1956's The Nun 2. In this film, a priest is murdered in France, and it seems an evil is spreading. So Sister Irene must once again come face to face with the demonic force. This is then followed up by 1997's Batman and Robin, which I understand is a ridiculous tonal shift, but I kind of find it funny also, so I'll leave it at that. In the film, Batman and his trusty sidekick Robin must stop the villainous Mr. Freeze from freezing Gotham City and plunging it into eternal winter, while also dealing with the seductive but deadly Poison Ivy's plans for world domination. This is then followed up by 2023's Blue Beetle, which is still in theaters and a really fun film if you haven't checked it out yet. So I might as well do a Nun 2 Blue Beetle double feature since two films in this world are in theaters at the same time right now. In Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes merges with a symbiotic piece of advanced alien technology and must use it along with the help of his family to take on the cousin of the former Blue Beetle who wants the tech for herself. And to finish this world for the time being, we have Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which is expected to give us another appearance of Annabelle in some way, shape, or form. So for now, this is the world of the DCEU and the Conjuring Universe, or as I like to call it, the DC Conjurverse, which is strange to watch chronologically, given a good 40% of the films are horror films and the rest are superhero films. But it's not the first time two films in the same universe are extremely different tonally. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know what you think when you watch it all as a singular franchise, and let me know what you think of The Nun 2 and Blue Beetle down in the comment section below. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching, and see you next time on Big Flick Energy.